Hi and welcome. This is Jamin Taylor with J Hunter Photography, and today I'm just going to do an edit of a photo that I did at a recent workshop. I had a bird photography boot camp workshop about a week or so ago, and went really well. We had a really great time, and a lot of cool birds showed up, and I went over a couple of editing techniques my editing workflow with my class, and I wanted to be able to kind of duplicate that. So I'm going to do that now and kind of go through my workflow and processes of how I took something from start to finish. And hope you enjoy this. So I'm going to pull up Lightroom, and this is a juvenile gray jay, also known as a camp robber or a whiskey jack. And we had a good session with these guys. I think there was 3 juveniles and a couple of parents, and this guy came right down to this cool old birch tree and gave us some great looks. So what I'm going to do is eventually I'm going to get to here. And now this is my finished product, and I already did this, and I did this during the class, but I want to duplicate that. So I'm going to attempt to do exactly what I did here and see what we come up with. So I'm gonna go back to the image. This is raw. I shoot raw, and I've gone back to no adjustments. This is just as it came out of my camera. So the first thing I usually do is go into my crop tool, and I will make a crop on this. And usually I like to have some portion of the bird in one of these third cross points. You can see there's 4 of them. And so I'm just going to bring in my crop in something like that. So you can see that the bird's eye is kind of right about there on that upper right thirds, and I like it there. Here you've also got this branch, this tree that kind of goes through this lower thirds, and I like that too. I think that's a nice touch. So I like how that's looking. I'm going to go ahead and just click on my crop, and we're going to go ahead and make that permanent. This bird is really dark in the face, and we've got some heavy shadow, so I'm just going to expose this out a little bit more. I need to boost the exposure, but I want to be aware of the white, so I've got some whites right in here, and I don't want to go overboard on them because I don't want to blow them out. So I think plus 0.50 is just fine. But I still need to get in here and work on this shadow area right here. This face is still really dark. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this tool here, and I'm going to make an oval. Now this is going to give me this tool. Actually, let me hover over. I can't remember what it's called at the second. So I can hover over all of these tools. There we go, radial filter. I work with them all the time, but I don't always remember their names. So. Okay, so it's really important at this point that I need to invert the mask, because right now it's applying these custom filters to everything outside of the circle, but I need to invert that. I need my adjustments to be inside that circle, so I'm going to click here under invert mask, and now all of those adjustments are happening right inside there. So I'm going to actually zoom in so you can see what's going on here. You can see there's still a lot of detail in there. It just needs to be recovered a bit. So I'm going to go in here, and I don't need that much saturation. That was kind of preset in there, but I don't need it. What I do need is exposure. I need to expose that a bit. And so I'm going to take it to about 0.96 here. Yeah, I think that's fine. I think that's looking good. Okay, now I'm going to take another one here and go for the eye, because I really want to boost that eye. Again, the saturation is just way too much. It kind of automatically does that for me, and I'm not sure why. There's something in the last time it was used or something. But anyway, so I'm going to go in here, and what I can do is just turn this, which is really handy. And it's just going to bring the exposure out on that eye. Just bring some of those highlights out. And it's looking actually pretty good. I like the face, it's much lighter now. So overall, I'm just going to boost the color a little bit here. I don't want to make it too out there, but I do just want to bring it up a little bit. I think 30 is plenty. Now, you can see some things that I've got going on here. I've got this like weird white thing here and here, and I really don't, I think it's, I don't know what it is, but it's weird, and it's kind of distracting. So I'm going to remove that, but I'm going to do it in Photoshop. So I'm all finished with everything that I want to do in Lightroom, just kind of some basic adjustments, color adjustments, and exposure and that sort of thing. So I'm just going to go ahead and open this up in Photoshop. I'll wait for it to open up here. It's a northern water thrush that I was working on. Okay, here we go. So this, we have our juvenile gray jay. First thing I always do is I go into my Topaz Labs, and these are really great plugins. You can go to Topaz Labs, just do a Google search for it and get in there, and they have a bunch of really cool plugins for Photoshop, and they're really helpful. One of my favorites is denoise, and that just takes the noise way down out of your photos. So I'm going to go in here, and you can see here my little navigator. It'll tell me where I'm at and kind of give you a preview, because you can go, you've got some presets right here, and they usually go for like a moderate, because it keeps the detail, retains the detail that's in your bird and the feathers and all that stuff, but it takes away the background noise. Here you can see that when I grab it and move it, you can see the background noise, and then it kind of pulls it away. So I'm going to hit OK here, and it's going to process this image and remove the noise, and we'll be ready to go. Usually it takes a few seconds for this to happen. We'll just give it a second here. Now what's going to end up happening is the denoise is taken away some of the detail in the feathers, so we need to recover that, and there's a really good way to do that, and that's with another Topaz Labs plugin, and that one's called Adjust, and I'll show you how that works here. We're almost done here with the denoise. Here we go. Alright, so we've got our image. It's been denoised. You can see how smooth that background is, but there's just enough noise that it keeps it from banding and doing some other weird stuff. So at this point, I need to deal with this little white thing and that little white thing, whatever those are. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my healing brush here, and I'm going to sample probably from, I think from there, and I'm just going to paint that right over. So that's taken care of. I'm going to shrink down my brush, grab another sample, and get rid of that. Take that sample there, get rid of that. If I really wanted to go crazy, I could really get in here and take some of those down. Just that actually doesn't look too bad. There we go, something like that. Maybe take a little bit of that out. I don't want to do too much, so. Okay, something like that. Maybe I have to smooth this over. One of the keys to this whole thing is to make it look like you didn't do anything. If people can tell that you did a lot of work on something, then you need to work on it a little bit more. I used to do faux finishing right after college, and this lady had been working in it for years and did a really amazing work. And she told me, and this has stuck with me, that one of the keys to doing that kind of work was that you always try to hide your tool. And by that she meant that there was no hard edges in some of the putty and plaster finishes that we did. Don't let the brush marks be seen unless it's specifically a brush mark kind of finish. But the basic idea was that you do the kind of work to where people don't notice your tools, they just notice the finished product. And so I apply that with my bird photography. I don't want people to be able to see that I did anything. I want it to look as natural as possible. And I've had pretty good success with that. So I work hard at that, and I think it really uh, makes your work stand out. So okay, so at this point I've gotten those those little areas taken care of, and at this point I need to go back in and need to recover detail. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to select the bird and get all of these feathers and all that kind of stuff. Actually, and I may as well just kind of go in here, and I like all this cool detail in the perch in this tree, so I'm gonna recover some of that too. I don't need to really select the legs of the bird because there's not really much detail there. All right, so I'm gonna get this thing here. And all I'm using here is this, it's just a little smart quick selection tool, and it's just brilliant. It works really well for doing just some basic selections. I'm not doing really intricate selection work. I'm just doing a basic selection, and I can come here and just do a little bit more, get some of these areas. You can see some of that. And then I'm going to hit Q, and this is going to give me quick mask mode. And you can see all these areas here that are kind of out of focus. Well, I don't really need to sharpen those areas because, well, they're out of focus. So what I'm going to do is just grab my brush here and make sure my opacity is 100. And I'm just going to kind of paint on here roughly something like this. Oops. Yeah, something like that. I think that'll work. So that's kind of giving me a nice feather on that. So now I need to go in. I need to adjust my selection, because if I was just to apply the adjustment filter to this, it'd give me some hard edges, and I don't really want that. I want everything to blend nicely. I want to hide my tools again. So I'm going to go in and contract this by 5%. Or excuse me, 5 pixels, and that's going to shrink my selection. You can see that I'm not quite at the edge anymore. I've come in a little bit, and that's good. So then I'm going to go ahead and modify my selection again and hit a feather, and this is going to soften that whole edge. It's going to give me, instead of a hard selection edge, it's going to soften that and give me a nice little feather. So I've got everything selected that I want. At this point now I can go back into Topaz Labs, go to Adjust 5, and this is going to recover some of the details that I want. And I have a couple of them that I usually kind of oscillate between. This photo pop usually does pretty good, but it adds a little more color in than I like for this one. This bird is really dark. He's just kind of, it doesn't have a lot of color in him. So I'm actually just going to go to mild details, and that's going to bring out some of these details. So I'm going to hit OK. I like the presets already, and that's how it turned out. So I'm going to go ahead and deselect this, and you can see it brought out some nice detail here. You got some nice detail here in the bird, in the face, and in the feathers, and all that kind of stuff. So I really like how this one has turned out, and I think we could call it a wrap. I think this is where I finished on this. It looks pretty good to me. So at this point I would just grab my signature, and I'm going to throw that on here somewhere like that, and I'm going to give it a color dodge. That way it kind of blends in. It stands out right now, but I'm going to drop the opacity down so it's not distracting away from the bird. I really just kind of want it to be there. I want people to know that this is my work, but I don't really want to take away from what's going on with the bird. So maybe there. I need to drop the opacity down a little bit more here. So something like that is probably cool. And so I will save this. And we'll go back into Lightroom, and there it is. So I should have actually 2 versions of this. All right, so here's what we started out with, and so there's what we started out with, and there's what we ended up with. So it's not exactly, I think my version that I just did is a little bit brighter, which is actually kind of nice. Actually, I think I like that a little bit better. You can see the crop is a little bit different, but we went from there. We started with that image, and we ended with this image. And I think that looks pretty good. I'm happy with that. So at this point, I need to kind of prepare it for the web. So I can't just, I'm not just going to upload it like this. What I usually do is go to image size, and I'm going to drop this down to like 16 inches wide and drop the resolution down to 180. That's enough that it's going to look good on monitors, but it's not quite up to par to print because I don't want somebody ripping this off and going to print it somewhere. So 180 resolution is pretty good for that. And then I'm going to save this as a JPEG, and I'll save it to my desktop. We'll go JPEG with that, call it Gray J, and it's done. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed this little tutorial, and if you have any questions, if anybody ever wants to know what I do or has any further questions on this sort of thing or needs more help, I'm always happy to help. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed it, and thank you.